The HOA president stood at my driveway in her spotless white heels. Phone already screaming into 911 that I was a dangerous, aggressive man who'd just assaulted her. All I'd done was raise my hand and say stop when she tried to barge past me into my backyard. What she didn't realize was that the quiet graphic designer she'd spent months trying to destroy had been patiently recording every single one of her power trips, and his wife was about to drop the hammer that would end her little suburban reign. It was one of those perfect Colorado mornings in Willow Creek Estates. The kind the HOA brochure promised, manicured lawns like green carpet, kids on bikes, and the distant hum of sprinklers. I was out back at 6:15 a.m. scattering feed for my 6 hens. The same little flock I'd kept for 3 years. Nothing fancy, just a clean, well-built coop tucked behind the garage. City approved. And honestly quieter than half the yapping dogs on the block. After burning out in corporate design, this tiny bit of backyard self-sufficiency felt like freedom. Fresh eggs, pollinator garden buzzing with bees, and the satisfaction of ignoring the endless emails about approved fence heights. My wife Sophia kissed me on the cheek as she headed to her car. Already in her sharp blazer. Big week ahead, she said with that knowing half-smile. Stay calm if anything happens. Record everything. I laughed it off. It's just chickens. Soph. What's the worst that could happen? She squeezed my hand a second longer than usual. With these people? Plenty. 2 hours later. The click-clack of expensive shoes announced trouble. Lydia Kensington, president of the Willow Creek HOA, marched up the drive like she owned the deed. Perfect blonde helmet hair, coral blazer, and that perpetual expression of someone who'd smelled something unpleasant but was too polite to say it. Trailing her was board member Todd, a retired accountant who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Ryan. Darling, Lydia cooed. All fake sweetness. We need to discuss the situation with your little operation back there. Several residents have complained about the noise and the smell. It's affecting property values. You understand. We're here for a wellness and compliance inspection. I wiped my hands on my jeans and kept my voice even. Morning. Lydia. You know the bylaws require 48 hours written notice for any interior inspection. And this isn't an emergency. Plus, the city says my setup is fine. Her smile tightened like a rubber band about to snap. Times change. Ryan. The community has standards now. That coop is visible from the street, barely. But still. And those birds, well, they're livestock. We can't have that dragging down the neighborhood aesthetic. I could see her little lapel camera blinking red. Setup. Classic. You're welcome to look from the driveway, I said. But you're not stepping onto private property without proper authority. Lydia's eyes flashed. She took one deliberate step forward. Right into my personal space. I raised my open palm, not touching her. Just the universal back-off gesture, and said calmly. Please stop. That was all she needed. She gasped theatrically. Stumbled backward like I'd shoved her. And clutched her chest. He assaulted me. Todd. Are you getting this? He's threatening me. Her voice pitched into full Karen hysteria as she dialed. 911? Yes. There's a dangerous man at 1422, Maple Grove Lane. He just pushed me when I tried to leave. I'm terrified. Todd's phone shook in his hands while he filmed from an angle that conveniently made my raised hand look aggressive. The cousin she'd brought as inspector just stood there blinking behind cheap aviators. I didn't move. I just pulled out my own phone and started recording openly. You're free to leave anytime. Lydia. Your car's right there. But she was already in Oscar mode. tears and all. He won't let me go. Hurry. 15 minutes later 2 patrol cars rolled up. Lights flashing but no sirens. The officers looked like they'd handled this exact script before. After taking statements and reviewing my gate camera footage, which clearly showed her dramatic performance, they gave her the polite cop version of an eye roll. "Ma'am, this appears to be a civil matter," one said. "We're not seeing any assault here. Maybe everyone should de-escalate." Lydia's face went from victim to viper in a heartbeat. As the cruisers pulled away, she turned to the neighbors who'd wandered out to gawk. "You all saw that. This man is unhinged. Who knows what he's capable of with those animals in his yard? Think of the children." By noon, the neighborhood Facebook group Safe Willow Creek had exploded. Lydia had posted the cleverly cropped video, my hand raised. Her stumbling back in slow-motion glory. Caption: Violent resident threatens HOA board during routine safety check. Is your family next? Comments poured in from people I'd never met, calling me everything from that aggressive chicken guy to a ticking time bomb. My freelance design clients started canceling. "Sorry, Ryan. We saw some concerning things online. One even mentioned community standards." I sat at my kitchen table that night, watching the digital mob form, and felt the old familiar burn. But instead of raging, I smiled a small, cold smile. I'd been quiet for months, documenting every petty fine, every passive-aggressive email. I knew exactly who Lydia really was. The next weeks were a masterclass in suburban sabotage. Fines started arriving daily, $2.54 visible agricultural structure, another $4 odor nuisance, my compost bin. Apparently a biohazard. Neighbors I used to wave to now crossed the street. Someone even left a nasty note in my mailbox calling my garden an eyesore that lowers our home values. But I kept feeding the chickens. Kept recording. Kept waiting. Old Mrs. Alvarez from 3 doors down finally knocked one evening. She'd lived here since the neighborhood was built. "That woman has done this before," she whispered over tea. 3 families on the edge lots sold cheap in the last 2 years after she buried them in violations. Turns out she's got a stake in that new luxury townhome development going up behind us. Your corner lot is the missing piece. Without it, the whole deal falls apart. It clicked. The community standards talk was just a Trojan horse for profit. I thanked her and kept my mouth shut. Sophia noticed my quiet fury but only said, "Trust the process, babe. Some battles are won by letting them think they're winning." The final board meeting was called for Friday at 3 p.m. Emergency compliance discussion regarding 1422, Maple Grove. Translation: surrender or we'll bankrupt you. The community center smelled like burnt coffee and entitlement. Lydia sat at the head table in full queen mode, flanked by her usual suspects and a slick lawyer who looked like he billed by the sneer. Residents filled the chairs. Some curious. Most just there for the drama. "Ryan," Lydia began, voice dripping artificial honey. "We've tried to be reasonable, but your refusal to comply has created an unsafe, unsightly environment. We have an offer from a buyer who values the community's vision. A generous one, considering the circumstances." The number on the paper she slid over was insulting, barely 60% of market value. "Sign today and this all goes away," she said. "Fight it. And the fines. The liens. The legal fees, well. You know how these things go. Your little side business is already suffering. How long can you hold out?" The room was dead silent. I could feel the weight of all those eyes. The clock hit 2:59. I opened my mouth to stall. The door swung open. Sophia walked in wearing her official county prosecutor's blazer. badge clipped to her belt. Followed by 2 investigators and a uniformed officer. The entire room did a collective double-take. "Sorry I'm late," she said pleasantly. "Traffic was murder. Also had to wait for these warrants to clear." Lydia's perfectly sculpted face froze. "What is the meaning of this?" Sophia didn't smile. She laid a thick folder on the table. "Lydia Kensington. You're under arrest for filing a false police report. Extortion. Conspiracy to commit fraud. And multiple violations of state real estate and racketeering statutes. Mr. Hartley," she nodded at the lawyer, "you're coming too." The room erupted. Lydia shot to her feet. Voice cracking. "This is harassment. I'll sue everyone in this room." Sophia played the lapel camera footage from the driveway incident, uncut. With audio. Then she laid out the rest, emails between Lydia and the developer discussing removing obstacles, kickbacks routed through shell companies. Falsified board minutes. Selective enforcement that only hit properties the developer wanted. 3 previous families had already come forward. Todd, the reluctant board member, finally cracked. "I'll testify. I have copies of everything she told me to delete." Lydia's mask shattered completely. Her face went from rage red to ghost white as the cuffs clicked. "You set me up," she shrieked. Sophia looked at her calmly. "No. Lydia. You set yourself up the moment you decided your neighbors were just line items on a development spreadsheet. My husband was never the threat. You were." As they let her out, residents who'd been silent for years suddenly found their voices. Stories poured out, illegal fines. Bullying. Pressure to sell. The HOA was going to be dismantled and rebuilt from the ground up. 6 months later, Lydia was facing real prison time. The development deal collapsed. The new HOA board, led by Mrs. Alvarez, repealed the ridiculous rules and turned the association into something that actually helped people instead of terrorizing them. My chickens are still happily clucking. My garden is bigger than ever. Clients came back once the truth went viral. And every evening Sophia and I sit on the back porch watching the sunset, listening to the soft sounds of a neighborhood that finally remembered it was supposed to be a community, not a corporate asset. Sometimes the quiet guy with the chickens wins. So tell me, when an HOA president weaponizes community standards to line our own pockets, who's really the threat to the neighborhood? The guy raising a few hens in his backyard or the woman willing to destroy lives to turn it into luxury condos? Drop your thoughts below. Because the next Karen might be on your block right now.